Good afternoon. My name is Natalia Svrtan and I work for Pesticide Action Network Europe. We are thrilled to welcome you to our event, Farming Without the Harming, Feeding Policy Action for Resilient Agriculture. This hybrid event convenes policymakers, scientists, farmers and civil society here in Brussels and online. This event is co-hosted by Friends of the Earth Europe, Pesticide Action Network Europe, the European Network of Scientists for Social and Environmental Responsibility, and Agroecology Europe. With this event, we want to thank the Belgian presidency for their work in the past 6 months and welcome the Hungarian presidency, which will take the lead in the coming month. The event addresses the urgency of reducing the dependency on pesticides. Current practices pose a significant threat to both human health and ecosystems. Fortunately, the solution exists. Agroecological practices and integrated pest management hold immense potential to decrease dependency on pesticides, while restoring soil health, biodiversity, and ensuring food security. More about it will tell us Clara Bourgeon, campaigner from Friends of the Earth Europe, and Lily Balog, president of Agroecology Europe. But before we start, let me just say a few housekeeping rules. For those in the room, please silence your mobile phones. And for those online, just a notification that this session is being recorded. You can ask the questions in Q&A window. We will try to answer them. And there will be a discussion after the event over a coffee and drinks. I give the word to Clara.
Sorry, I just heard from Hungary. Could you check that everyone online can hear you?
I turned on the microphone now, so can
I
you?
just get the information from Geza.
Now we hear.
Okay, hopefully you can hear us now. Sorry about this. So thank you very much for joining us to this event online and in person. So my name is Clara Bourgeon. I work for Friends of the Earth Europe, which is the largest grassroots environmental network in Europe, and we are very happy to be able to co-host this event today. This event comes at a very important time. As many of you know, it has not been a very positive few months for pesticide reduction at the EU level, in particular with the withdrawal of the EU pesticide regulation, also known as the Sustainable Use Regulation, the SUR, a couple of months ago. Still, the need to reduce pesticides remains as crucial as ever. We need to transition to more sustainable food systems if we want to protect human health, farmers, and the ecosystems on which our food production depends. Reducing the use of pesticides is not only urgent, it's also very much within our reach. Farmers all over Europe are showing that it is feasible to produce food with much less or no pesticides at all, and that farming without harming is indeed possible. We will hear today a variety of speakers who will talk about the solutions that exist and the policy actions that are needed to transition towards more resilient food and agricultural system. As Natalia already mentioned, this event is also taking place to frame the transition between the Belgian and Hungarian presidency, and we are very grateful to have a representative of the Belgian presidency here with us, and the head of unit of the Hungarian Ministry of Agriculture, who is joining us online. So yeah, we hope that with this event, we can open up a conversation on the way forward and put pesticide reduction back on the agenda at the EU level. And I will let Lily tell us a bit more about the event.
Thank you very much. I will just move here so the people following online can see me as well. I would like to warm everyone warmly as well on behalf of Agroecology Europe. My name is Lily Balog, as it was mentioned. I'm the president of Agroecology Europe, the European association putting agroecology high on the European agenda and connecting the different stakeholders in working towards sustainable food systems throughout Europe. And it is a great pleasure to co-host this event here with the other wonderful NGOs, because we are creating much more synergies, but most importantly, we're facilitating knowledge exchange between different actors who are truly important to really drive the transition towards a food system change, a food system that should be agroecological, because it has been proven many, many times that agroecology works and can provide a framework and many different paths to really realize a true transition and not only a substitution of one element by the other. So I would really like to enhance the importance of hosting such events where different actors, policymakers, academia, researchers, civil society organization members, and most importantly, farmers are present at the table and discussing the topic jointly, because this is the only way we can really shift the narrative and make real change in Europe and beyond. And yes, without further ado, I would like to give the word to Mrs.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christine Schanselaar from Pesticide Action Network Europe, and I would like to introduce Mr. Jens Boyen. He is Plant Health and Food Safety Attaché at the Permanent Representation of Belgium to the EU. He graduated at KU Leuven as bioengineer with a major in food technology and a minor in industrial microbiology. During the Belgian presidency, Mr. Boyen was closely involved in the negotiations on the proposal on a sustainable use of pesticide regulation, and he will provide us today with some insights on reducing pesticide dependency in the EU, and in particularly about SUR5. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Christine. So good afternoon, everyone. I also wish you a warm welcome, which is quite appropriate today. I'm happy that the room is at least a little bit cooler than outside. I hope you also excuse me for sitting down. I have to rest a bit from my walk here. But it's my pleasure to address you on this important event on farming without harming. I must compliment you on the name. It has a very nice ring to it. And I would also like to thank PEN Europe, the Friends of the Earth Europe, European Network of Scientists for Social Responsibility, and Agroecology Europe to invite me to open the interesting discussions of today. Now, our gathering today centers around a shared vision, a healthier, more sustainable and resilient agricultural future. We all recognize the profound impacts that pesticides have on biodiversity, water quality, soil health, and human health. And for me, these will be some of the closing remarks of the Belgian presidency on the topic of mitigating pesticide use risk in the EU. Because next week we will hand over our presidency and our role as an honest broker to our Hungarian colleagues. And I'm sure that they will make agriculture in the EU great and resilient again. But until then, I will use the presidency superpower of not only addressing you from the Belgian perspective, but also the broader council perspective. Now, when we started our presidency in January, the SUR, the Sustainable Use Regulation, was still on the table. We took over the discussions from the Spanish presidency and all their efforts to find a suitable compromise on the parts of the SUR related to the targets, the methodology, and the restrictions in sensitive areas. Now, these discussions showed us the complexity of the file and the challenges that we were facing. To add up on this, we also had rejection from the Parliament in November, which also showed us that we would have to navigate these complexities very carefully. That's why the Belgian presidency proposed to focus the discussions around the parts of the SUR which provide tools and guidance for farmers to help them reduce their pesticide use on the field. So we focused on the part of IPM, Integrated Pest Management, on biocontrol, and on the provisions around drone use. Now, you are all very familiar with IPM. It's not a new concept, but it is one that requires a renewed focus and a robust implementation. It promotes the use of combination of techniques, such as biological control, habit manipulation, and the use of resistant varieties. IPM emphasizes the growth of a healthy crop with the least possible disruption to the ecosystem, encouraging the natural pest control mechanisms. Under the current directive, IPM is mandatory, but the adoption has been uneven in the EU. So the harmonization of the IPM framework through crop-specific rules or guidelines can significantly reduce our reliance on chemical pesticides. And this is where we wanted to focus on during the presidency. The challenge that we faced in Council was to propose a system for harmonization of IPM, which did not impose too much administrative burden, both towards the national authorities and to the diverse range of farmers that we have here in the EU. As mentioned already, our efforts were cut short by the withdrawal of the SUR proposal by the Commission. And it might have been a very controversial proposal, but it also did contain some very good elements. And I hope that these elements will not be lost and that we can use them as building blocks for future discussions. Belgium, and now I'm speaking from the Belgian role, will keep advocating for a harmonized IPM framework and push for innovation in agriculture to help new solutions like NGT or biocontrol reach our farmers. I believe that today's presentations will demonstrate that reducing pesticide use is not only necessary, but also achievable. The discussions today will provide a blueprint for action, proving that we can protect our crops while safeguarding our environment, health, and farmer revenue. It's also important to address the difficulties that we face here. Transitioning to reduced pesticide use requires changes in practices, education, and sometimes even substantial investments. Now, there's a big role to play here for policymakers, but I think by fostering collaboration and conversation among farmers, advisors, policymakers, and other stakeholders, we can create an environment where sustainable practices and farmers can thrive. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boyle, for these insights on your work on the SUR file and also your work on looking hopeful towards the future to a more resilient and sustainable agriculture in Europe. I will now give the word to my colleague, Gergely.
Hello, I'm Gergely Simon from Pesticide Action Network Europe, and I'm really happy to welcome here Professor András Székely. He is probably the most recognized Hungarian scientist in relation to pesticides. András is here on behalf of the European Network of Scientists for Social and Environmental Responsibility. And please come in, András. And Professor András Székely is the Deputy Director of the Institute of Environmental Sciences at the Hungarian University of Agriculture and Life Sciences. András is a specialist in aspects of chemical, genetic, and biological environment and food safety, including organic micropollutants in the food chain, pesticide, mycotoxins, anthropogenic and technical pollutants. And András is asked here to speak from a scientific perspective on the current risk of the pesticide use in Europe. So thank you, András, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. So I'm representing the European Network of Scientists for Social and Environmental Responsibility here. And as I already mentioned, I will talk about regulation issues and current controversial issues about pesticides for the short time that it allows for me to discuss that. I'm also a member of the Hungarian Society of Ecotoxicology beyond my main profession as a university professor. And also I've been a delegated expert on the neonicotinoid working group or committee at the European Academic Science Advisory Council when we updated the current statement of the EASA regarding neonicotinoids. I will get back to that during the slides. How do I do the slides? Yeah. Oh. Good. So I will talk about integrated pest management very briefly because everybody is familiar with that here, and I will raise just a short.
Could you check the microphone? Do you hear it well in the back? Okay, sorry.
Okay, no, it is not okay. And I will just flash some examples, current examples regarding pesticide issues, pesticide regulation issues, and if time allows, I will get to public debates on glyphosate and neonicotinoids, two particular issues of highest importance. No, thank you very much. It's only animated, so Well, anyway, so integrated pest management is based on, from this aspect, as it boils down to pesticides, on a hierarchic set of agronomical methods. And of that, the pesticides is only on the top of this hierarchy, which is, or which are supposed to be used only when other methods, particularly biological methods or agrotechnological methods, mechanical methods, do not work or do not operate, or if technology doesn't offer other solutions. Well, it's far not for complete usage, but the point here exactly is that still, since our agricultural technology exists in a receiving environment of an ecosystem of complex networks of habitats, we can't expect that these chemicals will have such specificity that they will go without side effects, and that is the main issue here. One more thing is why organic farming is known for consumers. It's around, and still the term integrated pest management is not known. One part of that is that it needs more definitions, more specific definitions, specific of course, but also it needs to be publicized towards consumers so they can recognize advantages of integrated pest management. It's a pity that it is not better known among consumers. The European Union has a special issue both in pesticide use and in pesticide registration. About use, I will highlight here a few slides, pesticide use worldwide and in the European Union. As for registration, the European Union has one of the most strict regulation systems in the world, which is something that we have to keep up with. That's my belief. And also in environmental policies, an essential issue is the precautionary principle, which says that if there is an uncertainty related to emerging technologies, then the technology should be handled with precaution. And that is essentially important, of essential importance, that it's a fundamental role in the approach towards environmental risk assessment, which also is of high importance and should be kept in use. So if you look at the pesticide use worldwide and in the EU, you can see that the EU maintains a steady level of pesticide usage along with the change in the registered pesticides, bans and introduction of new pesticides. So this is already pioneering achievement that this continent is maintaining the low use of pesticides, which is altogether about 10% of the world usage. Meanwhile, the world use is growing. And if we look at the composition of pesticides among herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, and others, as you can see that the world usage is predominantly growing on herbicides, while in the EU, it's mostly related to fungicides, which has to do with climate change and migration of fungi from the south. Also, if we take a look at national usage, then it's 5 countries that take the majority of the pesticide use. So it's Spain, France, Italy, Germany, and Poland, the 5 leading countries in pesticide use. The fact that industrialization of agriculture leads to increasing pollution and environmental problems related to agrochemicals has been pointed out numerously. I just mentioned this one because it's has been led, the statement has been led by one of our key experts at ANSWER. And for this, we have to better control or more stringently control pesticides and develop new approaches, which we will talk about today, and that led to a number of statements or position papers, and that, for example, the Declaration of Nairobi in 2007, which gave rise to food sovereignty, agroecology, and that gave rise to sovereignty, and agroecology is on the rise, on emergence, and recent terminology, regenerative agriculture is also very much developing. So now I will talk mention some examples about pesticide registration issues. I will just flashlight the data or some conclusions, but always there are the references. So if you need more information, you can consult the papers, the original papers. So Dusson. How come? Oh, sorry. So in Dusson and colleagues established that the regulatory framework in the EU is highly regulated. Here are the declarations related to that, particularly the pesticide, the 4 set of pesticide laws and others. And their conclusion was that in spite of this strict regulation, there are still limitations in the evaluation of pesticides, and the 4 limitations they mentioned is the multiplicity of applicable rules, routinization of the evaluation, so it goes case by case, but not individually, in the sense that the same procedure is attempted to be done with all, lack of consideration of social data, and lack of independence of the evaluation. It's very important that they still emphasize that, even though efforts have been done to make evaluation independent from financial aspects. Also, they mention that the laboratory tests not always fully useful to model true ecosystem situations, so they urge that the environmental risk assessment should be focused more on biodiversity. In a similar paper, also French researchers claim in terrestrial risk assessment plots that current regulatory assessment processes for plant protection products fail to cover all aspects which is required for risk assessment. So they urge to introduce new methodological regulatory improvements into the system. Laras and co-workers have analyzed the ecological models used for pesticides in their environmental risk assessment, and they used a decade of data, but have been used in the process. And their conclusion was that there is a strong imbalance in the model usage in practice and what is required by the pesticide law on 2009. Also, they noted that modeling is more often used for aquatic ecosystems than for terrestrial ones, and they pointed out that there still exists a gap between existing models that can be used and the ones, the models that are being used in the evaluation or existing methods that could be used. Also, in a study of the importance of testing at sublethal dosages has been published by Bartling et al., and they were studying mostly pollinators, and they emphasized that it's not only acute toxicity that needs to, lethal toxicity that needs to be assessed or taken into consideration by lethal dosages, and the consequences measured have to be considered in the risk assessment. And this is required in more detailed, far more detailed assessment to be able to come up with solid conclusions whether given pesticide usages contribute to insect decline or not. There has been an attempt to prepare a list of minimal risk pesticides that has been attempted several times before, but now it's a new model published in 2020, which would provide a classification of 659 pesticides to be in terms of usage and safety, health and environmental safety of these uses, with the interactions of these individual active ingredients with each other. So that is very important. That has been used before very rarely. So individual usages were only considered. It has to be mentioned, though, that this over 650 active ingredients, only a small part of it are still registered in the European Union. So this describes the global situation more than, fortunately, than in Europe. Now, the first example of the great public debate is the issue of glyphosate. Around that, the renewal, you know very well, it went not very smoothly before, and this last renewal was also kind of controversial. One issue has been raised several times, that the pesticide registration in the European Union, where the registration of the active ingredients and the formulated products are separated from each other, should be converted into a more harmonized way, for example, more similar to the pharmaceutical or the veterinary drug, veterinary pharmaceutical registration. Also, well, this is, we can, yes, this recent re-registration at the end of last year provided an approval for glyphosate for the next 10 years. But the problem still remains, what is shown here on the diagram, that the problem here is not only, or maybe I would say not mainly, in the toxicology profile of the compound, more in the excessive use of it. We are using nearly 1 megaton a year of this active ingredient alone. And this market of glyphosate is steadily growing, now is responsible for over 45% of the pesticide, the entire pesticide market. 1 megaton a year is already a biogeochemical factor. The biogeochemical cycle of phosphorus is 13 million tons a year of phosphorus turning into bioavailable phosphor. So this is already, we could say, a biogeochemical factor. As a result, it became a ubiquitous water pollutant. And so this is why we detect, although at very low and maybe legally allowed concentrations in any aqueous medium, not only surface water. And this was, glyphosate provided the case for the most visible case of how the toxicology profile of the active ingredient can be mistaken for the toxicology profile of the formulated plant protection product, the formulated pesticide, where the formulant, polyethoxylated toluamines, turned out to be several orders of magnitude more toxic than the active ingredient itself. Now, this was an exceptional case, and Korea was banned almost immediately after this has been released as a legal decision. And the interesting part of legal part of it was that the Commission could not ban it because it was related to the member states, as the formulant was in the formulated products. And I'm quite proud that Hungary was, in this case, among the first ones to ban on that. But there are other issues where formulants modify the toxicity of the active ingredients. In the literature and in our work, we have found examples for that. Not only glyphosate, but other herbicides are problematic. An Austrian work group has tested the consequences of although reducing herbicide usage in Austria during 10 years, and they found in 3 indicator organisms, honeybees, earthworms, and birds, that while via reducing the dosages, indeed human health benefits could be achieved, but there were like 6-fold increase in the toxicity to these indicator organisms. So the environmental consequences of herbicides were increasing due to the modified usage. The vast majority of that was related to a herbicide called dicot. Now I would come to the, as the last example, to the example of neonicotinoids. And I mentioned that we put together this ESAC report on neonicotinoids, the current status of neonicotinoids. These are all insecticides that act on the nicotinic acetylcholine receptor in insects. It's very, very insect specific. It now represents about 1/3 of the insecticide market, and because of this use, it's a significant soil and water pollutant, and also has sometimes an outstanding toxicity to bees. And the study came to some very important conclusions. One is that prophylactic use, seed coating, when we coat the seed with the insecticide and plant the seed this way along with the pesticide treatment, is, well, on the one hand, is not more environmentally friendly in the sense of pesticide dosages. It uses higher dosage altogether than spray application, for example. The absorbance rate is also outstandingly poor. But the most important is that this kind of application should not be considered compliant with integrated pest management. We are using the treatment at the time of seeding. We don't even know what kind of pest populations will emerge. So this should not, seed coating should not be allowed in integrated pest management. And the other conclusion was that other compounds, substances, active ingredients, acting by the same mode of action cannot be considered a true substitute for that, because they preserve the same problem, this very same mode of action. It is very insect specific, but cannot exclude toxicity to bees. So sulfoxamines or butanolides that are often proposed as replacement alternatives cannot be considered truly here. Goulson and colleagues showed a study on the effects in Great Britain in the use of neonicotinoids, and they showed that meanwhile the overall treated area size remained the same, obviously. The treated area number increased because more applications, more repetitions of the applications were required, although the dosages steadily decreased. As a result, the true exposure to pesticides or the true release of pesticides remained roughly the same, slightly decreased though. But bee toxicity, as seen here, was drastically increased with the increased use of neonicotinoids. Very similar results were seen from the US, which I will pass on now. Toxic effects improved for mammalians, birds, to some extent fish, less extent fish, and highly increased for bees. And these are toxic effects that were published, the observations were published in Hungary, in sugar beet, where the highest problem is the removal of neonicotinoids. Technologically, it requires these neonics the most. So the study pointed out by Jocek et al. That less effective applications replace neonicotinoid treatments, and additional steps are required in technology. Indeed, in many cases, chlorpyrifos lip-raised neonicotinoids, which is a far more toxic phosphate, this problem ended with the ban on chlorpyrifos in 2023, but indeed the shift in such cases of such bans shifts back to more toxic substances, and their conclusions were fairly similar to what we concluded, although in one case we don't fully agree. So, in summary, yes, pesticides are jeopardizing the environment, they present harm, and they unavoidably will cause unintended side effects. And in this, the EU stands or takes a unique approach, and this should be maintained. We should keep to that. We should be as stringent on pesticide registration as till now, or even more. Should keep to the precautionary principle, and also that goes also for the EU Green Deal. The EU sets an example to the world, and we should keep that, so that in pesticide reduction as well, so that the Green Deal objectives are not only or are not reflected in cynical or less how to say, favorable responses. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot for this very insightful presentation that gives a great landscape or panorama to understand what is at stake. Now we are moving on to the next panel discussion that I'm happy to moderate. So I'm Elena Andu from Agroecology Europe Association, and I will invite our three speakers. So Caroline Amram from the Catholic University of Louvain. So yeah, you can come and then we'll see. Also Fanny Bourret, formerly working at the Wallonian Ministry of Environment, and now working at University of Liège, and Lily Ballard, who is president of Agroecology Europe. So yeah, it's great to make the link, and thank you a lot for reminding also the importance of the precautionary principle. Maybe that's also an approach that we should take when working on NGTs. And as we will see now on the next panel discussion, we will discuss about how to fund the real solutions or the promising approaches for food system change that help to get rid of the pesticides use and all the toxicity that we see have really harmful consequence. So yeah, now we move on to the more solution side and see how public action can be better streamed, and public money can be better streamed to move on more sustainable food systems in Europe. Okay, that's perfect. So our first speaker is Caroline Amram. So yeah, as I said, she's working on prospective studies, so in charge of prospective and strategic studies on food system transition at CITRA, which is a study group at, so yeah, you presented exactly. So yeah, the word is yours.
Is it better standing or sitting? Standing. Thank you, Elena, for the introduction. And so we're going to be changing subject. I will not talk about pesticide at all. Sorry. I'm from a team that is called CITRA. We are based in Louvain-la-Neuve, and we are a small team, 12 people, working thesis and as research assistant. We work with Professor Philippe Barret, that maybe some of you know, and he's been defending agroecology for the last decade. And so it's quite inspiring to be in this team. We have three thematic of research: value chain, production system. It's more like mode of production, really what are the practice on the field, and transition pathways. We have three principles of action. I just mentioned them so that you can localize from where I will speak. We have a principle of inclusivity. We always want to work with all the actors, not only the niche ones, or not only the technical regime that is in place. At the meso level, so we always work from the border of the gate of the farm to the political level, and transdisciplinarity, so we always work with people from the field. So the results I'm going to present you is a collaboration between research and action, as I like to call it. So CITRA, the research team, really wants to develop tools for transition. And so we want to do active research for policy, and research for action. And Agroecology in Action is a movement that is based in Belgium and that defends agroecology. Yes. So agroecology, maybe quick reminder, but maybe you all know that. So we have 13 principles that have been designed and precised by HLPA. And I want to attract your attention on this scheme because those 13 principles can be divided in two main groups, the agroecosystem group. So we're looking at technical aspects and how all the ecosystem is working. And another group is looking at the food system, so more about the economic relation between the actors and governance aspects. And an agroecology project should be tackling most of those principles, if not all. So I'm going to present to you the results of the study, but what was the scope of that study? We were approached by Agroecology in Action to see how is agroecology transition being financed in the Walloon region. So really small territory compared to Europe. We are looking at really just this scale, but it was already really inspiring, lots of results. Well, so we studied from 2019 to 2024 because it was also the time of our government, and also it enabled us to look at the former CAP and the new one. And it was, the whole methodology is based on the framework developed by the Research Center of Agroecology, Water and Resilience of Coventry University. So all the results, of course, are related to that analytical framework, and this comes with limits, but this I will invite you to have a look at the report. I will not talk about them today. Yes. So quickly, the methodology, for those who like methodology, but only one slide. So we had to build a complete database because, yes, how does the region, the Walloon region finance? Well, it's not so well documented, so we had to go through different reports, had to go through interview with the government, and it's been quite a tricky one. But we could identify 122 flows that were going to be evaluated. So step 2 was the qualification of all this financial flow, and we had to give them some agroecological score. So for each of the projects of the financial flow, we had to give a score for each of the 13 principles. And then calculate an effective contribution to agroecology. Bit more information on that is that with the score, we evaluated the financial flow that got a 0 were absolutely not contributing to agroecology. The one who had a score superior to 0 would be considered as contributing in a way to agroecology. Then on, because the score were pretty low, and I will mention that to you later on, we had to go a bit further, because otherwise we would say, okay, 63% of all the financial flow in Walloon region are absolutely not contributing to agroecology, but 37% were contributing to some kind of agroecology, some kind of change. Because the score were low, we thought, oh, well, maybe it's better to ponderate this amount of money by the score that each of this financial flow get, and we get a fairer evaluation of the result. And the percentage comes later in the slideshow to keep you attentive. Okay, next. So now I'm gonna go to we have 4 results I want to present to you. So first, and I don't know how it's in respective country, but in Wallonia, it's been a struggle to get all the access to the data because it was scattered information. We had a limited disclosure of financial flow from the public bodies and ministry. They were not so happy to share that, or even when we said, okay, we want to do that job, and they say, oof, good luck. So it was a bit frustrating. And for our research team, of course, it's really complicated to do good research with limited access to data. Which these results also leads to the question, yes, also some animation on the slide, but not working so well. Yeah. How does it, so because there were no consolidation of this data, it was then it led us to the question of how does the region pilot, monitor, and assess progress on all those aspects?
how do the ministry know if their action contributed in any way to any systematic change? And it's really difficult for the civil society to check ministries' accountability and keep them responsible for anything on this transition if nothing is documented. Second results, it's most of the projects, so from the 122, most of them got really low scores. So the ambition of agroecology, the way that any of the project would integrate those 13 principles was pretty low. Most of the project would only tackle 1 or 2 principles, and in Wallonia, mainly the input reduction and the soil health. So really technical aspects. Result 3, there it is. Only 10% of all the financial flow that was studied can be considered as contributing effectively to agroecology transition. So 63% doesn't do anything in that transition. We have a fair amount that maybe tackles that, but really we can only say that 200 million contribute effectively to the agroecological transition. Thank you. And in Belgium, we also, well, in Wallonia, we also took some time to evaluate the difference between the Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Environment, and to check who was actually contributing. And we thought that most of the lines were actually designed and managed by the Ministry of Environment, but the bigger ones were managed by the Ministry of Agriculture. So within the share of budget of Ministry of Agriculture, only 8% is dedicated to agroecological transition, but it actually represents 300 million. Whereas the Ministry of Environment was dedicating a lot of money to that, but it was only 41% of its share of its budget, sorry, but it will only represent 40 million. So many small projects, whereas maybe a change in the Ministry of Agriculture could have made a bigger change, like a small change in a bigger budget. Jumping now to something I like to share in this element, and it's okay with time? Okay. Usually when we are looking at policy, action, or projects, we like to use this scheme in my team. So we have organized on the vertical axis the adaptative to radical. So adaptative will be when we do a progressive adaptation of the techniques to integrate sustainable practices, like, reducing maybe a bit of the, as we said, of the pesticides, or doing some small adaptation, technical adaptation. And opposite of that is a radical, and that's maybe what we are here to discuss. It's an ecological system based on ecosystemic services that integrates social dimension. So we want a radical change. We don't want small adaptative measures. And also the other horizontal element is the specific. So when people are developing projects of financial flow, usually they would go either for specific, so center on a limited amount of actors representing an homogeneous group, or to an inclusive type of project, integrating all the actors in the diverse situation. Usually what we have is, in Wallonia at least, it's a radical specific. So small groups, niche groups will get a bit of money, and there will be always the same actors getting that money. They're radical, but they are small. Or adaptative and inclusive, kind of what we have with the CAP. Saying, maybe you change a little bit this, or you change a little bit this. And it's inclusive, but not everybody is, it's not going to provoke change. And what we are suggesting, and also that's what come with the result, is that we better be progressing towards Radin. So it's in French, it's quite easy to remember, for the Radin approach, because we need more ambition. We need really an ecologization of all those funds and projects, really going for radical change. And we need more budget, because most of the budget is going towards conventional farming for the moment. And finishing with the last slide. Yes. So some of the policy recommendations we have, we need a greater access to data, and that's for civil society and for research. Of course, we need a greater transparency and accountability over governance. We need a greater ambition of defend the development of a proper agroecological transition. we need a larger perimeter, and we have to pursue this research at different scales. So I know there's one starting in Flanders. Some have been developing that at the European level. Two elements. I used to have that. I had written "Make agroecology great again," and I was like, ah, nah. And now it's I think we can use it again for Hungarian presidency. And then also remark, of course, the organic agriculture remains a priority, and in all the studies, the organic agriculture has been considered as agroecology. So it's important to not be replacing maybe the whole discourse and not putting organic agriculture aside with agroecology, but keeping them well included, and it's organic plus that we have to defend. That will be all.
Thank you so much. Great, thank you a lot, Caroline. That's a very insightful study, and it gives us good material to also ask for governments to have concrete actions and fund the right projects and in the right way. And we have the luck today also to have Fanny Borev, am I pronouncing right? Yeah. Borev. So Fanny used to work for the public service at to coordinate the Walloon agroecological transition plan that's called Terrae, and she will speak a bit about this plan. And now she's working at the University of Liège, carrying out research in the field of agroecological transition. So yeah, the word is yours. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm studying Javier as well. Hello, yeah, you can hear me. So yes, you can go to the next slide. I've been introduced. Thank you. So just to start with, I'd like to tell you that this transition plan is not an idea that comes from politicians only. It actually comes from public consultation, which politicians organized after the COVID crisis. It was a huge consultation, including citizens, scientists, experts, and also different stakeholders, and a lot of different priorities emerged, among which the need to really accelerate agroecological transition. But that's only one of the many projects that emerged from this consultation. And this need was translated into this transition plan, which we call Terrae. It's a plan which involves a 6 million budget, 7 projects, which I will introduce you just right now, over 4 years. Okay, these are the 7. I missed some stuff, but that's okay. No, it's down the previous piece. It's okay. So these are the 7. The layout is different, but that's okay. We will cope with this. These are the 7 actions of the Walloon agroecological transition plan, and I will quickly go through all of them to illustrate to you what has been financed for that purpose. Okay, the first action is to, agree on what we are all talking about. So what is agroecology? What are the practices that are included in this under this concept? So there's a development of a practice catalog, and also the development of an agroecological diagnostic tool to diagnose farms and be able to assess whether they are or not agroecological, and to which extent they are, because so far agroecology is a bit of a vague concept, and it's hard for a farm to know to which extent they do comply these principles. So this is work in project it's under development. It's not finished yet, but we do have already the principles that define agroecology. Really happy to see that Citra uses the same, so I think we are on a good way. This work is held by Biotop Environments, a consultancy agency. You can go to the next slide, please. The second action is a tool, the development of a tool to assess functional biodiversity on farms. It's also carried out by Biotop Environments, consultancy agency. You can go to the next slide. It's basically, the idea is because we realize that biodiversity is a bit of a word, it's either forbidden with farmers or in this agricultural world, or it's not seen as positive, while functional biodiversity actually delivers a lot of ecosystem services,
So the idea is to develop a tool that farmers, advisors could use in order to illustrate to farmers how functional biodiversity can actually be helpful for their work. And the idea is to focus on biological pest control, so the link with pesticides is clear, and also on soil biological biodiversity, functional biodiversity. Thank you. The third action is to build a communication website. You can go to the next slide. Because we have all these initiatives going about agroecology, the idea was to build this website to collate all the information with all initiatives being summarized in an agenda, all results from all these initiatives, as you will see, other actions, finance research. So we're going to have some technical outputs that can be all put here so that everything can be found on the one place. And this website is also open to other initiatives than of the Terra A plan, as long as it's agroecology, that it complies with the 13 principles, it will be allowed to be shared here on this platform. Thank you. The next action is a network of 40 farms that are being accompanied to undergo agroecological transition. It's held by 4 different institutions in order to have really a systemic approach. One institution is specialized in livestock farming and grazing autonomy. Another one is specialized on biodiversity. The other one is specialized in soil health. And then the third, the CRA, is a research center. So this way, farmers get a really holistic support to underground transition. You can go to the next slide. So this network is it was based on a voluntary basis. They did they opened the floor to applications, and so farmers really volunteered to be part of this network. We had more than 40 farms applying, so they had to do a selection. The idea was to cover a wide variety of agricultural systems. So we had crop system, crop livestock, but also vegetables, short-scale vegetables, farming, etc. And the idea was also to have different stages of agroecological levels in order not to only be working with the already agroecological farms, and on the opposite, only to be working with those who have not yet done or proved anything. So together with these 4 institutions, they get an agroecological diagnosis of their farms. Then they build an action plan. They put in their farms experimental setups, and they get then accompanied to transform their farms. The idea is also that they learned from each other. That it's not only these 4 institutions which tell them you have to do this and this, but so it's a really participatory action approach where the knowledge sharing between farmers is also taking a very important place. So collective training, field visits between farms where they explain to each other what they do and ask for advice from their peers is a core part also of this project. The next one is participatory action research for 18 farm groups. It's actually, you can go to the next slide. It's actually the same idea as this network of 40 farms, but in smaller ambitions, in the sense that it then has, they get less budget per group. But so each group is a group of at least 20 farms and is supported by 1 institution, which I have listed here. They are all very diverse. You have non-profit association, you have research centers, you have universities, private as well, private companies like Cycloter, they do organic seeds, etc. And they do have to work on a research action participatory approach. You can go to the next slide. And in order to, again, together with their group of farms, reach agroecological objectives that they have decided together. And again, the idea is really to create this collective of farmers that they get a sense of belonging between this within this group, that they share knowledge between them, and that they together move towards agroecology. Yes. And the other action here is a study held by etc. You know who they are, and Climact. It's a feasibility study on the payment for ecosystem services. You can go to the next slide. So we hear a lot about that topic, but on a policy side, we didn't know really what to think about it. So we financed a study to really understand what are the interests, weaknesses, feasibility of this approach in Wallonia, focusing on two services, the carbon reduction and storage, but also on three, biodiversity and soil health. And the idea is to really develop a best practice guide for such payment in Wallonia. And then the last action is the further development of a tool which is called Decide. You can go to the next slide. It's a tool which has been developed for years, even before the launch of the Terrae action plan. But within this Terrae action plan, we financed the further development of this tool, which is a sustainability assessment tool, which used to be mainly focused on greenhouse gas emission. But with this extra funding, we hope there will be more systemic, holistic, to be more like an agroecological diagnosis tool, and include also the three pillars of sustainability, social aspects, and economic and environmental aspects as well, and not only just greenhouse gas emissions. So these are the 7 actions of this Terrae plan. You can go to the next slide. I just wanted, just in conclusion, the idea is really to help farmers through participatory action research. Also, the other actions that I did mention, which were not action research, like the development of the definition of agroecology, etc. Every action has to be based on consultation and on public consultation, and also bottom-up approach, in order not to have this definition which would not fit and would not be apprehended by the field. So there are a lot of consultation happening within this Terrae plan, also beyond these farm groups. What we can see, one of the main results already that we can say today, is that it's really giving the birth of a fertile ground for agroecology through different events that we organize with the whole Terrae community, let's call it. We see that there is a sense of community emerging, that there is a lot of interest going around these initiatives funded by the public services, and it's really giving motivation and incentives to go further. And they also start from the fact that they've met each other. They also do now initiatives that we are not responsible of, but we can see that having put them together has really started something that is beyond our control, and which is a really good thing. Just to mention, Terrae is only one of the financed tool on the public side. We also have the Food Wallonia plan, which addresses food system as a whole, because Terrae is really focused on the production level. We do not address how to relocalize food systems, etc. So this is another plan which does it. We have a whole organic plan for further development, and a program for pesticides reductions. So these are different tools that also exist, that I have no time, unfortunately, to introduce. And I think I have the last slide. Yes. So from my experience, some barriers and levels that I can conclude from my experience of having coordinated such program. Some of the things I've mentioned here are really specific to Belgium, and the separation of the different powers between the different regions, etc., which makes it really difficult, for example, to report on an EU level. Because it's difficult to put everyone on the same on an agreement. Something that I see as a really barrier, a huge hamper, which really hampers the development of agroecology, is the division between agri-ministry and environmental ministries. I mean, it doesn't really make sense anymore when you think that agriculture covers, for example, in 140% of the land. It is environment as well, so that's really makes it really difficult to move, because you have to deal with two ministries, which with the Ministry of Agriculture keeping only the production side in mind, and then the environmental ministry only the environmental ministry, and both of course should be merged today. But yeah, one of the big needs that I also, you can go ahead, please, yeah, thank you, is the development of independent farm advisory services, which is totally lacking today in Wallonia at least. And from these little farmer group that we have launched, it's starting to get better. But we also notice that councillors also have to do their own transition. They are not yet being agroecological advisors. Through this plan, we have given them training sessions on how to be an agroecological counselors and advisors, but we see it's not that straightforward and not that easy. But this really needs public support to have independent farm advisory, because at the moment they don't really get independent advisors on their farms, and that's really important. Thank you. I think I've gone through the most important point, our context. So as she said, I now left the ministry, the administration, public services. You can still contact me. I'm still working on agroecology, but on the research side. And if you want to be in touch with my colleague, Arnaud Stas, here is his contact. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Fanny. That's very an inspiring action and program from a public policy. That's inspiring, I hope, for also other member states representatives. And that really shows the importance and the key piece of the puzzle for the transition that independent farm advisory services represent. Now we will zoom out and move away from the more Wallonian action and see how we can also, from a European perspective, understand what is at stake when we want to fund alternatives to pesticides such as agroecological systems. So I will give the word to Lily Balog, who is president of Agroecology Europe and of the Hungarian Agroecology Network Association.
Thank you very much. And let me put on another hat as well. I'm a farmer as well since 2018. So that's why I will be jumping on different levels. And thank you very much for the speakers before me, because indeed, as Elena was mentioning, we will go a little bit higher, much like in that sense, in a conceptual level. And I will present to you, you can go to the next slide, please, a research that was carried out in partnership with Agroecology Europe called Agroecology for Europe, AE for EU. You can find it, we have a website for that, and there have been many different publications. And I will present one of them, which is about funding the agroecological transition. So first of all, I will present you the main findings. I will not dwell into the methodology because you can read that online. And I think let's dive deeper into the meat and like what is more interesting. So the research has been carried out throughout Europe and not only in Belgium, but as Elena was saying, so it's a European level research that was done. And some of the main findings were that agri-environmental measures, which are currently existing, can be or like are generally appreciated by the different actors. However, they can as well lead to a perverse effect as well. Let me explain. So, for instance, when different member states are financing the implementation of new hedgerows, some farmers are taking out the old, well-established, rich in biodiversity hedgerows in order to receive more funding so they can implement new ones. So the ones, but it's true, and it's a very perverse effect that we are creating. And I'm not going to dwell on this because there are many different ones. And so it's really important to keep in mind that even though that it seems that the policy will help the agroecological transition, it might actually do much more harm. Then another interesting finding was that the local scale is really important. As we have heard as well, we really need to act local in order to have a global impact. And in order to improve the agroecological transition, the important role of municipal governments was really stressed out by the different participants of the interviews or interviewees. And because their role is really to steer up the local actors and distribute smaller funds and to really target local realities. So they can be better targeted, as we have heard from the two previous speakers, to the reality of the terrain and to really involve the actors who are working on the terrain. As well, so thank you very much for saying it before, how you mentioned that smaller amounts of grants were allocated for smaller organizations and it created a bigger impact. And that's what we have seen as well throughout the different initiatives in Europe, that smaller grants create a much bigger effect, than giving bigger projects and bigger grants. So larger scale funding for larger programs. And you can go to the next one, please. Yes. One of the most fundamental barriers, though, to agroecological transition, as you might be aware, is the unequal playing field in which different actors are acting. And this is at different levels. So on one hand, we have the Common Agricultural Policy, which of course is starting to be, but not enough in our opinion. So it's basically not putting a brake on the other policies and regulations that are harmful for our environment, for our society, and farming systems. So if we are not putting a halt to the existing policies that are harmful, and we're just like little by little implementing like smaller improvements, we will not get there because they are like basically like what you take one step in front and two steps behind. So it seems that we are evolving, but at the end we are not. And this goes as well, not only, and you can just jump for the next slide and then come back. Thank you. So this goes as well for the different the distorted power relations that exist as well in the advocacy scheme, and the different actors as well that are promoting different farming methods and food systems. So just for as an example, one of my colleagues was doing research about different companies that are selling pesticides and other inputs for agriculture, and how much funding they are using to do advocacy in Europe. And as you can see, and we compared it to our data because that's what we knew, we have an average of 70,000 euros per year as a budget, compared to other PropLife Europe, BSFE, or Bayer, which are operating from at least 1 million euro to 6.5 million euros. So you can really see that the power relations are really distorted, and we need definitely more support for organizations that are promoting public goods. And you can come back to the previous slide because there was one remaining finding. It's that the subsidies throughout the CAP are usually inaccessible to small-scale actors. And this is really problematic because usually small-scale farmers, and now we are not only talking about 1 to 5 hectares of farms, but depending, of course, on the farming method, this can as well go up until 300 hectares, so it's not so small. And the bureaucracy burden that it implies to really do applications for these CAP subsidies are really difficult for them because they don't have the administrative knowledge, etc., and they cannot reach out, or it is expensive to have an agricultural consultant. And as we have heard previously, independent farming advisory services are almost inexistent. So therefore, they cannot really reach out and get help in applying to these kind of subsidies. Thank you, and now you can jump to. Fantastic, and now we go to the policy recommendations. So first of all, and most importantly, we have to use correctly the word agroecology in its holistic approach and not reduce it to a set of practices. Of course, agroecology is a set of practices on different levels, but it's as well as sciences and the movement. And as Caroline was explaining, it has a strong social dimension that we shouldn't forget. And but now I won't have the time to dwell more into it. And as you have seen, you have many principles and elements that you can like dive deeper to gain an understanding. But I believe that this is the starting point. That if we start misusing the word, then yet again, we're not going to go in the right direction, but we're just going to reduce it into a set of practices and lose the transformative power of agroecology. Then second, as that we need to fund projects that are dedicated to all levels and dimensions of the food system change. And it was wonderfully illustrated by the previous speaker, how the Wallonian ministry is addressing different levels of the food system in order to drive this change. Then the third one is what's already mentioned by me, that we have to avoid financing too large projects, because this might generate concentration of power. I know the Hungarian reality because I'm based in Hungary, and with our smaller organization that was funded a couple of years ago, we have no chance in accessing any funds. Therefore, we cannot really drive the change because the bigger player are always receiving the funds. So I can really testify that this is true, and most probably it's not only true in Hungary, but in other places in the world as well. Then another really important one is to integrate long-term thinking into the funding strategies, which was also mentioned, that we shouldn't only be thinking about 2-3 year periods, but on a longer term, and allow these transformative results over time, and after assess it, and allow as well continuation of these projects. Because usually sometimes when we have only these periods of, oh, that was a nice project, but no continuation. And even the farming community is asking, like, what's going to happen? What can we do? And once you have them on board, it's fantastic because you can really try to change with them, and you can really disseminate and scale out and up the agroecological transition. Then number 5 should be that we should develop results-based payments that reward evidence results. So as it was mentioned, that we can measure increasing soil, the increasing carbon content and biodiversity, that farmers are less polluting, that they have a higher welfare, that they contribute to the local food systems. So really reward them for the results that they are giving, because then you can incentivize them and have a much better measurement as well on the impact that they are doing. Then number 6 should be the increasing the understanding and capacity of agroecology by supporting participatory agroecological research. That was beautifully illustrated by the previous speakers, so I don't need to really dive deeper into it. And that training programs where farmer-to-farmer exchanges are happening as well are super important, because this is really how farmers can adopt new practices and as well empower them to really take on and be confident enough that, okay, I am able to try to do the change. So these field schools are really important because, of course, as it was mentioned, that the farming community as well they lost trust as well in the advisory services, because as it was mentioned, they're not independent, they always want something. So after a while, they do not trust them. But trusting another farmer who is willing to take the risk that they're going to change their system and their livelihood is at stake, I'm going to listen much more to them, because they are their whole livelihood is at stake. The advisory service, well, not really, like they just receive their monthly payment. Next one, please. Then we need to create an intelligent and responsive funding mechanism with simplified application processes, because I mentioned it's sometimes very difficult for small-scale agroecological farms to apply to these funding schemes. And it was really proven that with smaller and really easily bureaucratical schemes, they can apply, or there's a much more diversity of actors that can benefit from this, and then thus they can create a larger impact regionally and locally. And then these small scale funding opportunities should exist, that was already also mentioned, and yes. Then number 8 would be to empower local governments and municipalities to dispense these funds and to local initiatives, and to continue to build and provide funding via the leader approach. As I said, because they know much more the terrain and the local actors, they can reach out much better than if it's centralized and if it's coming from the central government or the European bodies. I mean, of course, they can drive and put out the different axes, but it's really important that the actors are involved locally, because that's how we can generate a real change. And then the last 2 ones are that we need to create an enabling environment for agroecology by the development of short food supply chains. So not only standing on the production side, but go as well for the marketing on it. As well, like with including public procurement, which is a huge potential market for agroecological produce. Sorry. And we need to value and support small-scale agroecological farms and enterprises, including those under 1 hectare in size. As it was mentioned, market gardeners are usually not owning more than 1 hectare, though nevertheless they are producing fresh vegetables, which they are usually selling locally to the local population. Therefore, they have a huge impact to improve food security and food sovereignty in the region. And we also need to support the new entrants to agroecology. These are, of course, I cannot dwell into or dive more into what are the different barriers to that access to land, access to seeds, access to funding, etc. But there are many, many different barriers, and we should really tackle this because, as you might know, in the next 10 years, 40% of European farmers will retire, which doesn't exist in the farming, so they will die or they will get out of the system. We will lose 40% of our farmers. So it's really important to start tackling the generational renewal and of the farming community, as well as supporting new entrants. And if they are coming into the system, we should allow them to change and to already start as an agroecological farm, because then we can drive the change much faster, can't we? And last but not least, we need to think and act systematically by overcoming siloed conversations and connecting institutions and ministries, and build integrated thinking and funding. But this comes as well through these conversations and through these events where different actors are convened and exchanging, because we can all learn from each other. And I'm pretty sure that the next panel, we will as well learn a lot from the ground, from the farmers who will be here with us. And that's why it's really important that the ministries and local and governments are having a regular conversation with civil society, because as you could see, civil society and smaller enterprises are driving the change of agroecology on the ground. So therefore they can receive feedback as well and to work much more closely in order to have a greater impact. And that was it. So thank you very much. I hope I managed to be under the 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Lily, and thank you a lot for the three of you for presenting also this very nice insights about how to fund and what are the challenges to fund alternatives and sustainable food systems model. And thank you also for Corporate Observatory Europe for the data regarding also transparency register, and see also all the power imbalances also in who is defending which kind of policies, and that explains also a lot of the political landscape that we are seeing. So we have a little time for questions. I know we are a bit behind schedule, but if there are burning questions or if there are any questions, we can take one or two at least. Yeah, Eric. Oops.
Yes, thank you. I represent IFOAM Organics Europe. So first, thank you for mentioning that organic is fully part of agroecology. But anyway, there's a lot of concept being pushed: IPM, agroecology, regenerative agriculture. So I think politically we need a bit of some clarity to make it clear that we push in the same direction if we want pesticide reduction. But my question is about indicator. I was a bit surprised, I think, by the presentation from Fanny, that you work on indicator based on life cycle assessment tools, LCAs. Like the product environmental footprint at the European level, because it's been proven by scientists that this indicator is not able to take into account the positive externalities of agroecological practices and organic practices, because they mostly reward yield. And so the LCA indicator gives the best scores to product from industrial farming. It does not take into account properly the use of inputs, and does not take into account properly impacts on biodiversity, negative impact or positive impact. So they are not neutral, and they point to a direction where the desirable future of agriculture is more intensification. And is blind to the benefits of agroecology. Some of it surprised, and I would like you to clarify a bit this issue. It's very important because the topic of the day is how do you measure sustainability and how do you define it. So I think we have to be very vigilant on this, like we were in the green claims discussion as well. My second point about indicators, I'm sure many of you in the room knows about that because it's been a big topic for discussion in the last 2 years on the SUR. It's the shortcomings of the European indicator to measure pesticide use and to measure pesticide reduction, because it's mostly a volume-based indicator, which gives the impression that natural substances and organic farming are the problem rather than the solution. Because neonicotinoids were mentioned, they are used by a few grams per hectare, whereas a natural substance like baking soda, which is allowed in organic farming, is used at 7 kilograms per hectare. So if you use this kind of indicator, you get the wrong picture. And the HRI1 indicator has many other loopholes, because as soon as the pesticide is banned at EU level, it's retroactive, so it gives an impression that pesticide use has come down, whereas it's not the case. So I really refer to you to the work of Friends of Europe Austria and Helmut Butcher on this. He has made some very interesting briefings. So, you know, we need to get the indicators right. So I wanted to hear from you what you think about that.
Thank you. Thank you for your very relevant question. Indeed, we are aware of this problem with LCA life cycle analysis approaches, and this is why we gave them further finance in order to go further than only just LCA, only assessing greenhouse gas emissions per kilograms produced. First, we also asked them to work not per kilogram, but per surface, which makes a totally different pictures in the analysis. And then they now have to also include other environmental impacts. So biodiversity is included, for example, and also social impact like farmers' income, farmers' self-sufficiency, etc. So this is why we included this finance into the Terra plan. And also just to nuance a bit, this is a tool that, so as I said, was already existing before the Terra plan. It's a tool which is more dedicated for research purposes, not really for farm advisory services. But still, it's important to improve it. This is why we do it. And for the farm advisory services, we finance the development of this agroecological diagnosis tool, which I mentioned in the first action of the Terra plan. So there's going to be another tool which is more going to be oriented towards farming advisory questions. But yeah, you're right, and that's why we try to improve this existing tool. So anyone else wants to?
Are there any other questions in the public? Do you still have the mic? Or not? Oh, no, sorry. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Dorothy from Wise Gardner at my own consultancy. I just wanted to ask a question regarding agroecology, because you said that we should keep it as a more general approach and with no specific criteria at your level. And I think it links to what the person before me asked. When, for example, we have the soil restoration law that's coming as well. We have the nature restoration plans, and we need to assess at some point the impact on biodiversity improvements. And we know that agriculture has a big impact on it, and carbon removal, carbon farming, is a proxy. But we know that it's not enough to actually measure what regenerative agriculture can bring to biodiversity protection and restoration. So what do you see? I mean, what kind of tool we could also develop to make sure that farmers can be incentivized, remunerated for the additional services they bring to nature restoration and soil health? Because for the moment, it's not really clear. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe you need to turn it on. No, but
Or you can take this one?
Yeah. Oh, no, now it's working perfectly. Yes. I guess then I formulated it wrongly. What I meant about it's not like taking it in generally, but like not to reduce it only to practices, but to really have the different dimensions of agroecology as well. And regarding the measuring tools, so not at all like diluting what agroecology means. It's just like quite the opposite, to have like a broader view and not just like limiting it to no-till or using of cover crops or etc. And regarding the different tools that can be used or indicators, there are several tools that have been developed. One that has been developed as well by Agroecology Europe called Oasis, which goes really in a farm level system and like is a quite holistic assessment that can be done by the farmer themselves. So they can assess their own farm and their improvement on their agroecological transition from year to year. And I can speak loudly. I don't know whether they will hear, but hopefully they will. So it's fine. Drop the mic. Yes, and that one can give a good base so that they can compare themselves, whether they have improved or not, where they need to improve, and to measure as well. And indeed, different things that need to be measured, not only like carbon sequestration or their contribution to biodiversity, but as I have mentioned several times, the social aspects, like how much they're contributing to the local food systems. And that's why there's also other tools as well, like TAPE, that you might be familiar with, that FAO has developed, and there are several other ones. Actually, we will be as well hosting sometime soon a webinar on like the comparison between the different tools, so people can have a better understanding of this. So there is the need, there are some tools existing, but we need to start applying them. You can, of course, like,
we can discuss it at maybe at the coffee break, because we are.
Okay, welcome back everyone. We will start again. So in the formal panel, Lily already took us more to the field, as she's also a farmer herself. And now I think now it's working, yes. And now we will continue with really practice experiences from the field. And we're really happy to have a panel of experts in different practices to reduce pesticide dependency, all in a bit different fields. They have very broad experience. In the middle, on the for you right middle, is Nicolas Meunier-Jolin. He's a PhD and an agronomist of cropping and farming systems at INRE. It's the National French Research Institute for Agriculture, Food and Environment. And he's been working on... is it not working?
No, not anymore.
Okay. That's so this. Okay, this is working for now. Okay. Yes, so Mr. Nicolas Meunier-Jolin is working since 2 decades on the decrease of pesticide dependency in arable cropping systems. And his research on IPM is based on long-term cropping system experiments and data mining using data sets produced by participative farm networks. Since 2011, he has also been working with farmers and advisors involved in reducing pesticide use within the French DEFI network. And he's also coordinating the Horizon Europe, Horizon 2020 project, IPM Works, which coordinates an EU-wide network of demo farms, which demonstrate farming systems with low pesticide inputs by implementing a holistic approach to IPM. And on the for your left side, we have Mr. Koen Willekens, PhD. He's a senior researcher at ILVO, at the Plant Science Unit. He has experience in soil management and cropping systems, and he's also specialized in soil management with respect to its effects on crop performance, on soil quality, on nutrient dynamics, and on carbon sequestration. He's also involved in the coordination of the POF platform Agroecology in Hansbeke. So it's a testing platform for agroecology, together with a farmer who has a 60-hectare farms in East Flanders. And they're also working together with Mr. Alain Peters, researcher, and he's also vice president of Agroecology Europe. So together they're working also on implementing agroecological practices there, for example, and monitoring also these practices. He has also broad experience in the field of small-scale composting.
Yeah, we'll introduce our 2 other speakers. So we'll have Elise, who's a co-founder, like Elise van Boven. I wasn't sure I was going to pronounce this right. She's a co-founder of a 10-hectare mixed farm near the city of Ghent. Its main source of income comes from annual subscriptions, offering 450 vegetable shares and 150 fruit shares. In addition, the farm also engages in small-scale animal production, raising free-range pigs, cattle, and chickens, which are sold through seasonal meat boxes. The farm's mission is to create a biodiverse and balanced system with happy farmers who are in close contact with their consumers. At the farm, Elise oversees pest management, biodiversity, soil health, accounting, and communication. And finally, sorry, we have Rafael Bonatesta, sorry, so he has a bioengineering background and he has always been passionate about biocontrol. His thesis in 2005 focused on on the use of beneficial yeast to protect apples against post-harvest disease. He then worked for the Belgian Ministry of Health in the department responsible for evaluating plant protection products. He later joined the University of Namur to assess the technical and economic feasibility of setting up a spin-off company to promote the discovery of a potential new active substance designed by Professor Pierre Van Cussem. And after 2 years and training in management, he and Professor Pierre Van Cussem set up Phytovent, a company that is specialized in low-risk biocontrol products that are now distributed in over 30 countries in the EU and beyond.
Yes, and to start, we have asked 4 panelists to prepare a short presentation or a statement, which also takes into account the fact or the broader question that many farmers in Europe are already showing that they can greatly reduce their dependency on inputs such as pesticides, that they are increasing the resilience of their systems and their sustainability. And so we asked all the panelists their views on the need to and the possibility to reduce pesticides. And also maybe to take into account what would be needed also from the EU level policy in this regard to support broader implementation of these good practices. So we will first give the word now to Nicola to give a short presentation.
Thank you very much. I will try to make it short with a short introduction to the IPM Works project and network. IPM Works is its 2020 project with demo farmers demonstrating IPM throughout Europe. Next slide, please. So the objective of IPM Works is to work with those pioneer farmers that are indeed implementing IPM and that are indeed reducing pesticide use, to work with them to demonstrate that reducing drastically pesticide use is possible and is cost effective and does not impair food security in Europe, provided that IPM is implemented in the farms with a holistic approach. So we discussed a lot on the holistic IPM concept. Since I have to make it short, I will not develop further, but in the discussion we can go to this IPM, holistic IPM concept. So the network of IPM Works, demo farms, is actually composed of 2 components. First of all, we are coordinating 5 pre-existing national initiatives, including the DEFI network in France, which is probably the largest network of demo farms on IPM. But also we have LEAD in UK, grown the German network of agroecological farms, and we have Pesticide in Switzerland also, who joined the IPM Works network. But the core of the network is that we launched 22 groups of farmers. Each group is about 10 to 15 farmers, close enough to be able to meet and to discuss with this peer-to-peer learning approach, which is very similar to what we have seen before on the Terrae initiative, Belgium initiative. So it's very interesting. Each group is managed and facilitated by what we call a hub coach, which is an advisor working with the farmers, helping them finding some solutions to reduce pesticide use and facilitating the peer-to-peer knowledge exchange, and also organizing demonstration events to invite all the farmers from the regions to come to the farms and see what is done to reduce pesticide use. We have 31 partners in the network. We are present in 16 countries, and we have right now in our 20 groups of farms, we have 250 farmers. We are organized in 5 agricultural sectors, namely arable crops, vineyards, orchards, greenhouse horticulture, and outdoor vegetables. And for each of the sector, we have what we call a sector leader, who is organizing the discussions at the European level to share tips, to share technical solutions for managing weeds, disease, and pests. Next slide, please. So I have a slide here to highlight the fact that IPM is highly site-specific, and there is no one-size-fits-all solution. And to illustrate this, I took 2 farms from the network. The farm on the left is mostly driven by agronomy and ecology, a very ecological intensive farm. This is a mixed farm in the Normandy region in France, with dairy cows, And the strategy for pest management here is based on long crop rotations with grasslands. And this guy is also implementing mechanical weeding, and he's mixing cultivars to increase the robustness of the cereals, for example. He's doing some delay of sowing of wheat, for example, to escape some weeds and disease problems. And you can see on this figure here, this is the pesticide use of this farmer, which is decreasing year after year, thanks to the work done with the head coach and the other farmers of the group. And at the beginning, this farm was already very low as compared to the neighbor farms, because here you have this red line, which is the reference standard average use of pesticide in this region. On the right, you have a very different farm. It's a Dutch farmer producing potatoes and sugar beets and so on. And here the strategy is much more based on technology. This guy, well, he is using indeed resistant cultivars of potatoes, but his strategy is based on the great use of decision support systems and on technology to reduce the dose of the treatments for the seeds of potatoes, and also for the herbicides and fungicides with precision spraying. And this guy is also reaching the targets of halving pesticide use as compared to neighbor farmers. So both of those two strategies are considered as IBM. Next slide, please. This is a very short result to illustrate what we have done with the farmers. Here we made an attempt to estimate an indicator, a metric of the level of adoption of IPM based on a simple score, which is increasing if the farmer is using resistant cultivars, if he's using decision support systems, if he has a complex crop rotation, all the components, technical components of IBM. So the more you are on the right, the more you are adopting IBM. And here it's an indicator of pesticide use through the treatment frequency index. And you can see here in our three groups of vineyards in Spain, Portugal, and Slovenia that we have indeed a nice correlation. The more IBM is adopted, the less pesticide is needed and used. So we could conclude that IBM indeed works. Next slide, please. My last slide, just to say a few words about the future. IPM Works is a H2020 project starting in 2020 and finishing this year. We would like not to stop the network, but to continue in the next years and to extend the network largely. We would like to go from 22 hubs to maybe 200 hubs and 2,000 or more or 3,000 farmers in all the regions and countries of Europe. And for this, we need some funding. We need some funding for the coordination of the network at the European level. And we are asking each candidate to the network to contact us, but also to find some local funding. And we are advising candidates to try to attract the CAP funding that are dedicated to the farm demo in each country and region. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Your work and also the farmers involved clearly show that IPM works, and it's also nice to see how the treatment frequency increases the more ambitiously you implement IPM. We will now give the word to Koen Willekes, who will also provide a short statement taking into account the same question.
So my statement will be about reduction of herbicides. I'm convinced that we do not have to fear a reduction of herbicides or a ban of certain herbicides, because we have highly performant mechanical weed control devices, machinery like rotary hooves, weeding harrows, also finger weeders, also intra-row hoeing machinery, also GPS steered. So this the efficiency of these tools is dependent on the availability of the machinery, but also on the skills of the farmers. And efficiency is also dependent on soil and weather conditions, but also for chemical weed control. Efficiency is dependent on soil and weather conditions. At our institute, we have a multi-year soil management field trial where we compare plowing with non-inversion tillage in an organic vegetable, in an organically managed cropping systems with vegetables and arable crops. And there we cannot use herbicides, we use mechanical weed control. And we perceive that in a 10-year time period, that it's not tougher to do the mechanical weed control in the non-inversion tillage plots compared to the plowed plots. Also, direct drill systems can drastically reduce herbicide needs because you can apply mulching techniques. And one of the possibilities is to grow a multi-species cover crop mixtures in between cereal crops, and then you can lay down or roll down with a roller crimper this cover crop mixture when it's in the flourishing stage. And by that, you can create a mulch layer through which you can sow the next cereal crop. Another example I saw in Estonia, that farmer who was sowing his peas in a cover crop in the straw of rye, which was cultivated in the previous year. And he was sowing his peas in that mulch, and that made that he has no need to use herbicides. Then what's also important to manage weeds or to control weeds is a fast crop succession. So you should avoid fallow periods, by example, by undersowing. And a monoculture is not only attractive for pests and diseases, but also attractive for weed infestation. So it's important to establish a large diversity of cultivated plant species, a large diversity of plant families, and this leads to lower weed pressure. A larger diversity can be achieved by intercropping, by the use of multi-species cover crops, and also by lay farming systems in which you alternate a grass clover lay with arable crops. Then it's also important to keep the soil condition in a good shape. So avoid soil compaction, waterlogging, and also excessive fresh organic matter decomposition by organic fertilization. And last but not least, we have to distinguish between weeds that harm crop production and weeds that might be functional for crop production, regarding pest control and pollination. So that was my statement for further discussion.
So I noticed hearing the previous speakers that my preparations might fit better into the previous panel than into this one. So I'll just go on the go and see where I land. So Plukboerderij Grondig is a beautiful example of the fact that farming zero pesticide is absolutely possible. We provide an income, sorry, for 4 full-time farmers on a little bit less than 10 hectares. We do it by short chain agriculture, so our produce is directly sold to the customer. There is no in-betweens, which makes a big difference. Our main motivation to farm agroecological is obvious. It's to protect biodiversity and nature and ensure that the environment is not polluted. And also, we want to ensure that we can provide access to healthy food to our community. And when I say healthy food, I mean food that doesn't contain any residue of pesticides. I brought some pictures just to give you a better idea of the farm. So we are a mixed farm, no pesticides, no synthetic fertilizer. As you can see on the picture in the background, we have a very intense crop rotation with more than 50 kinds of vegetables and about 20 different types of fruits. This crop rotation is, we also apply a lot of cover crop and green manure. Next slide, please. I think very important in this conversation is that we choose strong varieties. Our varieties are not selected based on yield or the way they look. We select our varieties based on resilience and taste. We apply no-till. So I missed one slide. Really aiming to have a lively soil with a lot of smaller and bigger animals in it. And we've also installed, very importantly, beetle banks, as you can see on the picture behind me. Underneath our apple trees, there is a strip of winter hardy grasses. We don't touch it, so we don't mow it. It always looks like this. And we've installed these beetle banks every 60 meters on our field, which is based on science that the little insects that we want to attract for natural pest control can crawl about 30 meters left and right. And so if you have on your farm every 60 meters one of those strips, you have natural pest control. And then also we put a lot of flowers in between our crops to attract insects, also for natural pest control. So when I got the question, what is needed to implement pesticide-free practices more widely, I find it a very big question, as also mentioned before in the previous panel. I think we need a system-based approach that works on a lot of different perspectives. And for me, I also heard it before, providing ecosystem services should become an inherent part of agriculture again, very important. For me, soil health is one of the most important things because I think soil health is the connection between environmental health and our own health. If you eat food that comes from a healthy soil, it will be more nutritious. I found that in the previous conversations, agroecology can become a little bit overwhelming sometimes. I have to be very careful. I see Lily looking at me because I totally follow her that agroecology is much more than only the practices of no-till and cover crops. But I also find that sometimes this can be overwhelming and that maybe focusing on, for example, soil health would be very easy for some farmers to access to agroecology. And I also think that a healthy soil would create kind of a snowball effect, taking all the other agroecological pillars with it. Yeah, I can talk for a long time on this topic. For policies, so like I said, ecosystem services, very important. Farmers with a healthy soil should be rewarded, but also farmers that are working towards a more healthy soil. I say it like this exactly because of what Lily pointed out, is that very often the farmers who already did the work don't get the funding, which can be very annoying sometimes. For example, we implemented agroforestry in our system, but we never had any subsidies for it, which we could have if we implemented it a bit later. Something controversial that I also want to say carefully, I think that supermarkets should be, and also the retail sector should be held more accountable for the products they sell. I heard a research saying in an American, it's America, it's not Belgium, but in an American supermarket, if you remove all the processed foods, all the added sugar products and the alcohol products, there is only 17% of the supermarket left. And I think if you then afterwards also remove all the vegetables that contain pesticides, residues, I don't know what would be still in the supermarket, but I guess it's very little. For me, it's really a mystery why vegetables today almost look like they are made from plastic and they're not tasty anymore. I think we really need to reverse our idea of healthy foods and redefinition what is healthy. And so governments, of course, should set the example by spending their budget on pesticide-free foods in hospitals, schools, and other institutions. And they also should ensure that local farmers have access to the markets. Why not dream of a supermarket that's actually a hotspot for nice local agroecologically produced food? And then all the other advantages of agroecology, like a strong community inclusion, will stem further from that. I totally went off track, but this was my statement.
Thank you very much for the valuable statement, and I think your presentation suited very well in this panel, so that was perfect. I will now give the word to Rafael.
It's time to see the slide. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Rafael Bonatesta, not an easy name. We can switch to the next slide. Yes, okay, we spoke about in the introduction about PhytoSafe. I had till this morning a second ad, namely chairman of IBMA Belgium. IBMA, sorry, the mic is not working, so yeah. Okay, sorry. Thanks. Great, so IBMA Belgium, so the voice at the Belgium level of the biocontrol industry, but till this morning, where during our General Assembly we will elect my successor. So I'm going to speak you about biocontrol as game changer for a competitive and sustainable agriculture in the EU. So we all know that across Europe, farmers have been under pressure to reduce the use of DPP while facing intensive international competition. Now they lack sufficient access to effective, economically and viable alternatives like biocontrol, and concretely, there is a gap in the toolbox if they want to keep controlling the pest and disease while remaining productive. What is behind this term of biocontrol? So there are, in fact, 4 categories. The first one is microbials in the bottom right, let's say. So all the beneficial insects like ladybirds, like cirfe, like microwasps that can give some work with parasitism against other insects, for instance. This category is not tackled by the regulation 1107, the regulation that is responsible for the placing on the market of the plant protection product, conventional and biocontrol. The other 3 categories, namely natural substances, semiochemicals like the pheromones, widely used in orchards and so on, the microbes like yeast and beneficial microbes that can also help to control disease and other insect population. All these 3 categories are tackled by this regulation 1107. We all know that there is food security is a EU priority, but we have to know that it goes hand in hand, so there is no dualism with sustainability. EU play a critical role in meeting food needs, but we must also enable farmers to work sustainably and provide high quality products for our tables. Okay, just to tell you that biocontrol is much more than just pest and disease control. In fact, when we use biocontrol, like, I don't know, for instance, plant defense inducer to fight fungal disease, obviously you will reduce the quantity, the pesticide, the fungicide that will be needed. By this way, you will foster biodiversity, the importance of the soil. We discussed already about that. It is fundamental because in your soil you can also improve the presence of the mycorrhiza to help the production, to help also to give more defenses also to the plant. You increase biodiversity with all the pollinators, with all the beneficial insects. You also play on human health with the reduction of the residue on the consumer, for the consumer, but also the operator exposure. So it's much more, it's really a holistic approach and much more than pest and disease control. Yeah. Yeah, I see that the slide is a bit has been changed a little bit, but okay. A concrete example, one product, a plant defense inducer, phytosol, biocontrol example of a use in potato against late blight. You can see, okay, the color are a little bit, it's a bit tricky, but in red, the evolution of the pest severity of Phytophthora infestans, so a very virulent disease on potato. In orange, you can see the line, the reduction of the severity. You can go further thanks to the application of phytosol, so a foliar application of this product. And in blue, the copper, copper hydroxide. So the use of copper hydroxide obviously has an efficacy on the reduction of severity. If you use the dot line in blue, is the low dose of copper. And when you mix this low dose of copper with the dots blue plus the orange line, you end up with this green line, which is a combination of very low dose of copper plus plant defense inducer. And by this way, you reduce you reach out the same efficacy than a classical and conventional program. So often we heard, okay, biocontrol is limited to protected crops, tomato and strawberry and blah, blah, blah. No, it works also on arable crops too. Is confidential? No, we just are doing a massive launch this year in Germany, for instance. It is only, biocontrol is only dedicated to organic segment. This is not true. So we are also providing solution to IPM segment, or people now in conventional trying to go to IPM. This is also important to take them on board. And biocontrol lacks of efficacy? No, even against such tough disease like Phytophthora infestans, which is, according to my knowledge, one of the most virulent disease in our area, it works also. So the issue is really the EU process, which is unduly long compared to other regions like Brazil or like the US. Because it has been designed for conventional pesticide, and we have to fit with this not appropriated regulation. So we urgently need to speed up alternatives to populate the farmers' toolbox. This is a mapping that I created for you. So different colors corresponding to the time to get biocontrol solution in the market. So for your information, it takes between 7 to 10 years to put a product in the market in Europe, while it takes something like 3 years maximum to reach out the market in Canada, in US, in Colombia, in Kenya, and so on and so on. It is even shorter in other regions like Brazil or Mexico. I do think that within 1 or 3 years, it is really possible to assess the registration, the potential registration for a biocontrol that are naturally occurring most of the time in nature. So yes, there are some initiatives. So this is moving very slowly. So, for instance, there is an initiative coming from the European Commission together with the German authorities, ZAPID, that, okay, where it has been said that priority should be given to low risk and green solutions. So this is a good point. And yes, you can go further. Yeah, most importantly, to give to low risk, sorry, just before, low risk an unlimited period of time. Because now, for low risk, every 10 years, we have to renew by providing a huge set of data, the registration like any conventional pesticide, while the reality is very different. So what we need is a real supportive regulatory framework. So we need that the EU Commission establish a more favorable framework for biocontrol, extremely to designs to streamline the registration of those solutions. So concretely, we advocate for a 3-step approach. First of all, EU biocontrol definition. We can provide any member state or EU Commission with such a definition, very scientifically sound. Then a better implementation of the regulation 1107, first by a real mutual recognition. Nowadays, each member state try to reinvent the wheel and to duplicate the evaluation of the other member states. This is not at all the concept and philosophy behind the mutual recognition. To give a priority lane for biocontrol, so we need experts at the ministry able to assess those kind of solutions. And where emergency authorization are considered, then to give priority to biocontrol. And then target changes to 1107 for biocontrol only. Yes, by giving provisional authorization like it was possible in the past, based obviously on a minimal data package, removing, as said, the periodic re-registration, provided that there is no issue from the phytopharmacovigilance point of view, obviously, and then to facilitate the label extension, for instance, because yes, if it works on the powder mildew on cucurbits, it should work also on the powder mildew on strawberry, and no further study should be given. Then all this to say that farmers and biocontrol industry are in the same boat, and we all know that robust regulation is needed because it is also important to give credibility to the sector. However, nowadays excessive administrative burden is we are facing too much administrative burden. So other regions, as said, are much more competitive, threatening our food and farming industry. Also, our ability to innovate, because when we have money now in the SME, we tend to give priority to a registration outside Europe because it takes too much time, as I mentioned, in the mapping to get a registration in Europe. And this is a pity because lots of biocontrol solutions have been developed initially by SMEs. Also, it's not negligible in partnership with universities. So we need more biocontrol to populate farmers' toolbox assets and to increase the value while reducing residues and limit the impact on human health and environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentations. We'll move directly to questions from the audience, and then if we have time, we'll still ask you some other questions after. And I also check online if there's any questions from participants. So who wants to maybe two questions first?
Are there any questions? Yeah, you can also still think about it. We see that online there haven't been any pressing questions on this part. But I would like to maybe ask, sorry.
Not a question, just a comment.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yes, of course.
It has been mentioned before, and now also pesticide-free term, and I would advise to use it, know what you mean about pesticide-free. There are three levels, at least three levels of pesticide-free. Ontologically, pesticide-free means that there is not a single pesticide molecule in the sample that you are testing which cannot be provided. Chemically, analytically, it means that by your analytical methods you can detect, cannot detect. That's not the same as the previous one. And then pesticide-free in the supermarket means that all pesticide residue levels are below the maximum residue limit stated by the law. And so I hope I don't have to think that in your supermarket, so many vegetables would have to be thrown out, because that would be a direct violation of food safety to sell those produce. I do hope that that is the case, so maybe 17% wouldn't decrease that further that much. So just if you use pesticides free, then just be aware of define what you mean. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree. My statement was based on a study I read on the website of PEN Europe about PFAS. I don't know the English alternative, pesticide, and there were a lot of residues in the European supermarkets, and a lot of, and for me, that's not pesticide free.
Yes, but there are
yeah, they are used also to glue the pesticide onto the crop, but maybe I should use a harmful chemical instead.
Yeah, maybe I could extend a little bit this discussion. I think if we want to support the decrease in pesticide use, we have to engage other actors than farmers. We have to engage retailers, cooperatives, and traders, and the consumers. I guess it will be very difficult to engage the traders and the cooperatives and so on, because very often the transition to agroecology might go against their interests. For example, selling less pesticides, selling less fertilizers, because very often there is a link between pesticide and pest pressure and weed pressure and the fertilizers. Diversification of in agroecology is something which is very important, and for the cooperative it's something which is difficult, because you have to it's more logistically difficult and costly and so on. And at the end, diversification means also less specialization of European agriculture, meaning less export of cereals on the world market, and probably less import of other products such as plant protein that is widely imported from America. So I think it will be, for those reasons, it will be very difficult to engage those kind of actors. So we have to engage consumers. And to engage consumers, so it's not maybe easy, but easier to engage in very short markets as you are doing, but it will be more complicated for, I don't know, cereal cropping and so on. So, but we have to bring the information of the pesticide use to the consumers. As was said before, IPM is not well known, so we cannot build an IPM label. It will not be understandable by the consumers. So my suggestion would be to simply create a kind of score of pesticide use on the products, inspired by the Nutri-Score that we have in some European countries. We could have a pesticide score ranging from A, no use of pesticide, and green A from your farm, it would be nice, and to red F from farms that are using a lot of pesticides. And it could be a way to bring the information to the consumers and to probably to bring some price premiums to those farmers who are decreasing pesticide use, thanks to this information given to the consumers. And I guess it is a way also to protect the European farming from the unfair competition of products that are coming from abroad, that with less pressure on pesticide use. It might be a way, and I think we need this. We need to find some market solutions so that reducing pesticide use for farmers is not anymore a constraint, and they are protesting against these constraints, but becomes an economic opportunity for them. And probably this kind of pesticide score is a way to reach this target of economic profitability increased strength thanks by reducing pesticide use.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we indeed think it's very important to include the whole chain, and also during the SURP proposal, there were some attempts to include it and also include the obligations for retail, for example. But yeah, they didn't make it, and the whole proposal was withdrawn. But it's indeed important, and at the same time, I also think it's important that citizens would be better informed on the fact that integrated pest management is mandatory, in fact, in the EU, but currently implementation has been lacking. But I see there's another question from the audience.
Yeah, good afternoon, Michael Schmidt. I work for the Greens in the European Parliament. I have a very specific question on something that I think both our Flemish friends mentioned, the no tillage issue. And I think there is a growing consensus, scientific consensus, that we have to move to gentler tillage methods, or even go as far as no tillage approaches. At the same time, there are very well established organic farmers who've been doing organic farming for 30 years and have come up with amazing farming landscapes and amazing products, who feel that they still need a certain level of tillage there. So and maybe also Eric can come into this conversation, because I'm still not entirely sure what sort of the medium-term perspective on tillage will be in this broader context. Thank you.
I think it's not the aim to ban tillage. Might be the aim to ban pesticides, but not to ban tillage. It's depending on the cropping system. It's depending, also on the skills of the farmers, the machinery. But we know that from a scientific point of view, that reducing tillage can enhance soil health and soil quality. It does. We have the findings, scientific findings about that. But sometimes you need the seedbed preparation or the plant bed preparation. Then you might have to till, but then you should only to till to the depth you are planting or you are sowing. Then another, it might be also necessary to till when you have soil compaction problems, and soil compaction might be due to harvesting on a wetter soil, so then you get soil compaction, and to reduce or to remove soil compaction, sometimes you need tillage. Even you might need some plowing. But we have also plowing devices that can plow just to the depth the compaction occurs. You have also when you have compaction, a deeper compaction, you have devices, you have cultivators that can decompact without inverting the soil. So it's not so straightforward. It depends also a lot of regarding the skills of the farmers and the machinery you have available.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're sorry, but due to a very limited time, we will have to close the discussion here. But we hopefully can continue a bit afterwards with a drink. But we will now also give the floor to Mr. Gabor. He's an attaché at the permanent representation of Hungary to the EU, and he will also say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a very great event to discuss these topics. Just very quickly, because we are behind time, just want to come to what Jens said at the opening statement regarding the SUR discussions which took place since 2022, and it has been withdrawn by the Commission in February. I think I have to highlight that during these discussions, no single member state was questioned the importance of reducing the pesticide. Everyone agreed that it has to be done, it has to be achieved. The question was basically that how, and I think that's what caused the big debate among the member states, because in the Commission proposal, there was the proposed methodologies, the proposed way out was not perfect, and of course that caused a lot of questions and troubles, and at the end it resulted in the withdrawal of the Commission of the proposal. So, and then other big question was, which was always highlighted, which has been touched already here today in many presentations and in many topics that has been mentioned, that the alternatives and the toolbox that was clearly said here, that member states and of course farmers were worried that what are the alternative solutions after the withdrawal of the chemicals. So basically, I think what is the consequences of these 2 years negotiations, that farmers has to have alternative solutions, and of course integrated pest management, biological solutions that has been touched here in many of your presentations are very important things, and of course helping the authorization, supporting the authorization of biological products is all very important. And therefore I think the most important that we have to focus to provide the alternative and affordable and available solutions for the farmers. And from the EU point of view, I mean, the incoming Hungarian presidency will come in July. What we see now is at this stage, we don't see any proposal on pesticide. There is nothing that we see coming, but most likely the Commission is working on possible proposals in the future. But in our presidency, we are not planning to discuss pesticide related topics so far. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriel, and thank you for the panel. And I would like to come to the last presentation because we are very happy to welcome online Mr. Géza Gabriel from the Hungarian Ministry of Agriculture, and he'll be joining us online. And Géza has been working in the public administration related to plant protection for over 24 years. He currently works for the Department for Food Chain Control of the Ministry of Agriculture, and he has been directing the work of risk management and supervision unit as head of unit for over 7 years now. The legislative, strategic and professional management tasks related to the plant and soil protection and plant health are under his professional management. And he was participating in the Council Working Group negotiations on the draft regulation related to sustainable use of plant protection products related to the European Green Agreement. And he has a university degree in food engineering, plant protection engineering, and economics. So welcome, Géza, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gergely, for the nice introduction. Firstly, the most important question, that can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much for the response. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I would like to thank Pan Europe for the invitation and the organization of the conference. I could make myself available for the whole conference, so it was a pleasure, and I could hear lot of interesting discussions and presentations. And what I was glad more specifically is that this importance of soil health has been mentioned, and the soil health is something that we taking care of much in Hungary. The soil is protected by the law in Hungary, and one of the major issues as regards in our field of discipline in our upcoming presidency, that we try to put forward the soil monitoring directive in the EU negotiations. So it was really a pleasure that the soil health was mentioned, among other things. So it is my pleasure to be here and to share some thoughts with you regarding sustainable plant protection, and on behalf of the Department of Food Chain Control of the Hungarian Ministry of Agriculture. In our fast-changing world, where global trade in food ingredients and products is a daily reality, eliminating risks to the food chain is increasingly becoming a strategic interest of all. Safety of the food chain must be guaranteed from its roots. So plant protection has an utmost importance in that, we think. So generally speaking, the risks posed by plant protection products can be reduced by firstly authorizing them before they are placed on the market, and after by regulating their use. In our opinion, the EU is currently on the right track when it comes to managing plant protection risks. In the European Union, we operate one of the strictest authorization systems in the world, and with the entry into force of the Sustainable Use Directive in 2009, we set the direction towards the integrated pest management, IPM, as a pledge of sustainability regarding the use of plant protection products. But of course, we cannot sit back. There is still much to be done, primarily, we think, with regard to the widest possible practical implementation of integrated pest management. So there was some talk in the meeting as well in regards to the sustainable use regulation. So let me tell you about a few thoughts about this as well. So during the negotiations of this much discussed, controversial, and now withdrawn SURE proposal, it was proven that a regulatory proposal can only receive broad support, and this way can fulfill its function in the achievement of environmental and climate goals effectively if it is not jeopardizing food security. So the good balance and the practical rationality matter. We must not forget this in the future either. Looking over the years, Hungary uses plant protection products below the EU average. What does this mean in terms of numbers? Between 2012 and 20, the EU average use of plant protection products expressed in kilogram active substance per hectare was 2.2 kilogram per hectare. In comparison, during this period in Hungary, it was only 1.65 kilogram per hectare. You have to consider this data as well to understand better the Hungarian position regarding the withdrawn SURE proposal. If the proposals alone were like 50% national reduction targets and the proposed complete ban on plant protection products for certain areas had been introduced, unforeseeable consequences would have had to be faced at the EU level. Considering that the impact assessment accompanying the proposal didn't provide satisfactory answers regarding the expected possible effects of the proposal on food security. I would like to say in advance that Hungary, just as Gabor said, still agrees with the main goals expressed in the Farm to Fork strategy, since we all share responsibilities in the reduction of risks and use of plant protection products. In our opinion, this main goal can and should be achieved through the wide-scale practical implementation of the integrated pest management. Now, taking advantage of the opportunity provided by this forum, let me share with you two Hungarian specialties in this respect, which is, in our opinion, greatly can contribute to the implementation of the prudent plant protection practices. Firstly, an organization and network quite unique in the EU has been successfully operating in Hungary for nearly 25 years. This is the Hungarian Chamber of Plant Doctors, which brings together the highest level of professional and practical knowledge of plant protection. At national level, the members of this chamber, who are plant doctors with advanced plant protection qualifications, can provide services for farmers to help them as needed in the proper implementation of IPM. Secondly, the other measure at national level is that we have been expanded the two distribution categories introduced in the Union regards to pesticides, so the professional and amateur use, to three categories: two professional categories, so-called class 1 and 2, and the class 3, which refers to amateur use, of course. In this way, in Hungary, the professional category is stricter than in the EU. Accordingly, the strictest category 1 products can only be purchased and used with a prescription from a plant doctor who is the member of the chamber. This system serves to ensure the reasonable use of plant protection products and thus to reduce the risks and use of them. In Hungary, in addition to promoting IPM, we are also committed to the development of organic farming. This is why we developed the action plan for the development of organic farming in 2022, which supports domestic organic farming development with detailed measures until 2027. One of the most important objectives of which is to double the share of organic agriculture over the next 5 years in Hungary. We believe that the significant commitments made by member states to increase organic production will also result in a further and significant reduction in the risk and use of plant protection products EU-wide. The European Union's policy supports the use of low-risk products containing microorganisms or naturally occurring active ingredients instead of plant protection products containing chemical active substances. Fewer and fewer companies deal with the development of new active substances of chemical origin due to the huge costs and the long implementation time. Larger companies focus on the development of active ingredients that can be found even in nature and can be produced at a lower cost and in a shorter time period. However, it should also be taken into consideration that these new developments cannot always keep up with the rate of the continuous and, from the point of view of risk management, of course, necessary withdrawals of active substances. In addition to the already known and previously occurring pests, new ones appear against which we must learn to protect ourselves. The biggest task is to meet these challenges with the best of our knowledge and the knowledge and application of new scientific results. In this regard, I would like to emphasize what already has been said by some of you, the increasingly urgent need for widely applicable, effective, and safe alternatives of chemical pesticides to achieve our integrated plant protection goals. In addition to plant protection regulations, sustainability objectives, including the reduction of the risks of plant protection products, are becoming more and more evident from the financial support side as well. The new Common Agricultural Policy Programme entered into force in 2023. Within the framework of the eco-scheme, many new subsidies have become available, the conditions of which is to reduce pesticide use. If we add to this the fact that the requests submitted by the farmers significantly exceeded the planned expectations, then a significant further decrease in the use of plant protection products is expected by the end date of the current CAP in 2027, which is good. Finally, let me summarize what has been said. I would like to emphasize again that our goals are common. It is necessary to further reduce the risks of the use of the plant protection products. In our opinion, we can have this the most effectively with the practical implementation of integrated pest management. In other words, the widest possible and professional practical implementation of IPM is our main aspiration when we talk about the sustainable use of plant protection products. This is the main task of the plant doctor's profession in Hungary. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Geza, for your invitation. And thanks to all panelists who contributed to today's event. The closing word will be given by Martin Bernin, Pan-Europe's Executive Director. Martin holds PhD in pathology, he's a veterinarian, and he joined Pan-Europe in 2012 to campaign against neonicotinoids. Obviously, he was successful. Without further ado, I give microphone to Martin.
Thank you, Natalia. Well, today we've heard a lot of very interesting and inspiring presentations, so it's a bit difficult to make an inspiring conclusion after all this. First, I would like to thank the speakers for the really good presentations, also to thank the Belgian and the Hungarian permanent representation for their presence, Mr. Gabriel as well, for being here. We talked about how to ensure a reduction of pesticide use in the EU. We often speak about the impact of pesticides on health and on the environment, but what I think also we are lacking very often is to remind that we need to move faster towards the transition, because every year around 10 synthetic pesticide molecules are leaving the EU market because they are being banned, because after 30, 40 years of use, we realize that they are carcinogenic or toxic to reproduction. And very quickly, the increase in pest resistance to the remaining substances will become more and more of a problem. There are no new synthetic pesticides on the market, so it's really urgent to move forward towards a systemic change. We also, sometimes I also think we, from our public authority, we should hear more, and also from the farming community, that the first victims of pesticide use are farmers themselves, their families. They are heavily exposed to pesticides. We have, fortunately, now more and more scientific knowledge on this, and it's really dramatic to see how the neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's diseases are on the rise, especially in populations heavily exposed. So I think it's another reason our public authorities, out of respect for the people who produce our food, should move a bit faster. I also think well, it was briefly mentioned, PFAS pesticides. It's also something that is more and more visible, is the fact that PFAS pesticides and their metabolites are contaminating our water supply, and we don't know how to get rid of them because it's very difficult from a technical point of view. So this is another good argument. Now, coming to the population, we heard several times people saying we need to have citizens on board. I think this should not be something we question anymore. There are so many petitions, European citizens' initiatives, polls, and so on, that show that there is a massive support to phasing out of synthetic pesticides and better protection of people's health and the environment, that the population is there. I think it's this kind of discussion often is used in the wrong way, because we have all the proof that it's not necessary anymore to think about this. Now, we talked about the failure of the sewer, and people tend to think, okay, but what new legislative proposal will we have to reduce pesticide use? I think it's really important to bear in mind that we already have a directive on the sustainable use of pesticides that is already making mandatory to do everything we can before using synthetic pesticides, to provide independent advice. Mr. Gabriel gave the example of Hungary, but this is very, very poorly implemented in most member states. And with or without the sewer, member states have this legal obligation to do much more and to ensure that pesticide use is reduced. So today, a big thank you to all the speakers for talking about all the great initiatives as solutions. I think it was very inspiring, but you also showed that we need much more public investments into the system, how to change it, to increase the knowledge among farmers, help them buying or having access to new machines and so on, because solutions already exist. Of course, we can ask for more and we need to develop more in some aspects, but for most crops, the research shows that I think the IPM Works program is great for that, that already in the farms who move towards the transition towards real IPM, not fake IPM, that indeed is very difficult to label because a lot of people say they do IPM with a 3 year crop rotation. And it works, we get much more than 50% reduction of pesticides. So, but for that, we need to have a commitment from public authorities ready to invest. There was, after the Second World War, a huge investment to modernize and chemicalize our agriculture. Now we need a massive investment and a commitment from public authorities. And for that, again, I think that they have the democratic support to pour a lot of money in the system to have this transition. So again, thank you everybody for your presence, and thank you to our co-organizers, Friends of the Earth, Agroecology Europe, and Answer. And the last thing, Christina, my colleague, has a great ancient varieties apple orchard, and she has brought some apple juice for the speakers. So again, thank you everybody for your participation.